In the last chapter, we looked at Hill's conception of faith, how it ties into self-confidence, and one's definite chief aim. We must not only have a goal to aim at, but we must also believe and have faith that it can be brought into reality. The fact that we can make it actually happen, right? The greatest reason most people fail, argued Hill, was a lack of self-confidence. And if you don't believe in yourself or the possibility that you can make this happen, you'll be more susceptible to giving up. Your goal won't happen, right? And even if we do make progress towards it, we might not make it to the end unless you believe that it's possible and continue believing it. Even when we run into hardship, failure, setbacks, defeat, whatever, we have to keep, even in those moments, believe that it's possible. Maybe not now, we're going to keep trying, or whatever it is, right? But the point is to not give up and to not shift in your desire. Do not weaken in your goal. Knowing this, right? Because this is not a simple desire or faith or belief he's asking. And it's not something you do for a day or a week or maybe even a month. So knowing this, how can we become self-confident or develop faith in ourselves, right? And Hill argues that this skill is developed through autosuggestion, which is the topic of this chapter. So, what is the definition of autosuggestion? And is it worthy of an entire chapter? Simply put, autosuggestion is the repetition of thoughts that one wants to focus on until they become thought habit and influence one's subconscious mind. And what is the point of creating a thought habit in relation with this book? And the goal here is that as we're carrying out in our day-to-day lives, we may forget the objective of our main goal, our definite chief aim, which chapter 2 focused on completely. So by making our goal, our definite chief aim, and again, this book's goal is to make us rich, by making it a thought habit, the thought of our goal will come into our conscious mind more often, sometimes even when we forget the goal. Furthermore, it's nice to develop a habit of faith that one can do what they set out to do. So a thought habit of picturing setbacks as temporary defeats rather than failures is nice, because then when we meet with failures, we don't have to consciously think that, oh, maybe I could get over this, oh, maybe I shouldn't quit right now. The goal of autosuggestion is that's already a thought habit. So even when you're not consciously in that mind state where you might be giving into the negativity of the moment, the situation is overwhelming, but then the thought habit still snaps into your brain and you're like, I can do this. This is just a temporary failure. It's not permanent. It's only permanent if I give up right now completely. I could do this. I'll figure it out. Maybe I don't know right now, blah, blah, blah. But these are all thought habits of a positive nature that keep you believing that you can attain your goal. And that is the strength of autosuggestion. And the way we accomplish that is through repetition of thought. And again, until it becomes subconscious. And the goal is that even when we forget it, hopefully our subconscious mind injects that thought back into our brain. Now, Hill introduces it himself by writing on page 80, autosuggestion is a term which applies to all suggestions and all self-administered stimuli which reach one's mind through the five senses. Stated in another way, autosuggestion is self-suggestion. On page 80, he suggests that the dominating thoughts which one allows to remain in their conscious mind eventually become a part of their subconscious mind. And this has severe consequences for Hill because sooner or later our thoughts materialize in the physical world. And if the subconscious mind will take both negative or positive and it doesn't discriminate, then the consequences could be serious if we do not take our thought habits seriously. And you see this in something like a psychological self-fulfilling prophecy. And a self-fulfilling prophecy is the idea that one believes something will happen, then they start acting in that manner and it actually comes true. And therefore their belief brought it into reality. For example, if I believe, my girlfriend is going to break up with me, I subconsciously or consciously at that point start acting suspicious, which begins to push her away or makes me look needy or whatever it is that actually leads us to pushing away. And then she ends up breaking up with me, and I say, I knew it. Really, I was the cause of all that happening. Okay, this is gonna get fun. Where do our thoughts come from? The thoughts which enter our brain, some of which we even feel alienated from or disgusted by. We're like, I didn't think that, or why am I thinking that? Right? We don't seem to control where they come from, at least not fully. Not all of our thoughts do we control that come into our brain. We only take control once they're conscious in our mind. So again, a random thought comes into my brain, and then I might not even identify with it. I might be like, how am I even thinking about this? And then there's others, or most, let's say, that I identify with. Even the positive, the negative, whatever they are, the thoughts coming into my brain, I all assume they're me. Like they're a part of my identity. I identify with them, but I don't necessarily choose the ones that come into my brain, right? Things are happening and your brain is just thinking all the time, thinking. But we direct our thoughts once they're conscious in our brain, but we don't choose where they come from. So we only take control once they're conscious in our mind. So Hill would argue something like, our thoughts come from our subconscious mind, which stores everything we've ever sensed. So, or from infinite intelligence. Our thoughts could come from God, for example. How do we influence the subconscious for Hill? So we emotionalize our dominating thoughts until they become habit or enter our subconscious. Once we influence our subconscious, with positive thoughts directed towards our definite chief aim, then it becomes a safeguard. How? Well, our subconscious mind can inject the positive thought habits into our conscious mind as a safeguard from the everyday hassles of life. So it's what I was talking about earlier. For example, today I might have a lot of negative thoughts of doubt, let's say, and then random positive thoughts appear. Don't stress over what you can't control. Think about how nice life will be when you accomplish your goals. Even one step towards it today is better than doing nothing. You've overcome more difficult things in the past, and so on. A lot of positive thoughts just enter my brain. This is where the subconscious comes in as a safeguard. Those positive thought habits that I've developed will inject themselves into the conscious mind seemingly out of nowhere. And these can come at crucial times when we're met with obstacles, defeat, negativity. We did not force these thoughts to come into our mind at this time, but they appeared. And they appeared because we had made them habit in the past. So that is the reason autosuggestion is so important for Hill. Now that we know what our goal in life is, it's time to start developing positive thought habits that will keep us in check and in line with it and support us when we are met with failure, because consciously controlling our thoughts towards our goal, towards our plan, towards everything all the time is draining, to say the least. And we don't have that capacity at all times, right? Our thoughts will be taken by the world. We will get caught up with what we're experiencing in our day-to-day lives that we might forget or might be met with defeat and feel negative or whatever, right? Like we can't always be positive and happy and thinking about our goals and whatever, but the goal here is, right, we obsess and we emotionalize and develop positive thought habits that will keep us at least in line with our goals. Now, this isn't a one and done solution, but we'll get to that later. But the goal here is to start developing positive thought habits that are in line with our goal. And the reason for doing that is because even when our conscious mind strays, sometimes thoughts of a positive nature will be injected back into our mind because of our thought patterns. Negative conscious thoughts influence the subconscious. Remember, our subconscious is influenced by our dominating thoughts. So if over time our dominating thoughts, our dominating conscious thoughts, continue to be of a negative nature, then our subconscious will also be influenced negatively. So the same way that we can develop our positive thought habits, they can easily be negative. And that could even happen by neglect, right? By us not consciously forcing positive thoughts into our mind until they become habit, then we might consciously or unconsciously just become negative, because the world has a lot of negativity in it. So we might just get caught up and think negatively and be met with defeat, and then all of a sudden we have all these negative thought habits that we're arguing against also. So the same way we could influence our mind with positive thoughts and develop those into habit, it can happen with our negative thoughts. So for example, we get a negative thought and then we dwell on it and make it bigger than it is. Oh my, this thing is so big of an issue. I don't know if I can overcome it. I don't know if I could deal with it. And repeat it to ourselves over and over, and we emotionalize it, right? Because it's we picture it to be a serious thing, but it might not be. Of course, there are negative situations that are massive, but let's say it's something like, oh, like I failed this exam. How am I ever gonna come back from this? I don't know what to do. Or, oh, I broke the bumper of my car. I don't know how I'm gonna fix this. What's gonna happen? Oh no, like it's gonna cost thousands of dollars. Oh, money I don't have. And then you start stressing and feeling the stress in your body, and you're ruining your day that's been fun, whatever. Like you start emotionalizing the negative thought habits, and if you don't catch it, and that keeps happening day in and day out, maybe not for the same thing, but you keep being met with negative things and you keep dwelling on them, then you're going to develop negative thought habits, and we don't want that to happen. You don't want to say things like, I'm a failure, and attribute it to yourself, your character, right? Especially when it's in line with our goal. I didn't fail. I'm not a failure. Yes, I failed at that. I'll try something different next time. So we got to make sure that we're not attributing failure to our character, right? We are not failures. We can change, we can improve. We might have been a failure once, even if that is the scenario, but you could still change and improve, and you have to believe that, right? That's the faith that we're talking to. You have to have that minimum self-confidence to believe that you are capable of change. And be careful to not start developing negative thought habits, or maybe we have in the past developing many. Me, myself, I have many negative thought habits, I think. I'm more naturally inclined to negativity, and yet the positive ones that I forced on myself over the years also contribute to my character, and they seem to argue, right? I have negative thoughts and then positive thoughts, and then they argue randomly. They just appear into my brain and they fight, but the goal is to consciously start adding to the positive side and actively try minimizing the negative side, especially when it's in line with your goals, to develop them as habits. So when we say negative things like I'm a failure, and we attribute it to ourselves instead of saying that failed, I'm going to try something different, it creates a negative feedback loop where both our conscious and our subconscious minds, or our conscious and subconscious thoughts, are negative. And this will be the place where one must work the hardest to change themselves towards a positive mindset if they've built up this much negativity to the point where it's become thought habit. And will it be fun or easy to fight against our own negative thoughts, right? Well, one, to even have the realization that, oh, I'm thinking negatively, I need to stop, is already a huge task that I don't think we do, not a lot, right? You have to be mindful to a certain degree to catch yourself and be like, I'm not going to ruin this moment. I'm not going to, you're going on a date and then you pop a tire or something, and you let that ruin your whole day. When the date was great, everything was good, whatever. Like you minimize that. You say, I'll deal with it and do what you have to do and whatever, right? But you don't let that negative thought dwell in your mind and ruin your day and blah, blah. So it won't necessarily be fun, right? You're going to argue with yourself and be like, look, I need to relax. I'll deal with this later. I'll figure it out. But right now I can't let it ruin the moment. It's conscious realization and mindfulness that you are feeling these negative things, and to minimize them and to start thinking about the positives. So will it be fun? No. But the consequence is of not doing it, right, is living in negative thought and feeling we have no control over our lives. Again, not ultimate control. I can't snap gravity away. I can't be certain I won't get cancer. However, there is great deal within my control, and that's what we're trying to focus on. And what isn't in my control is my thoughts, right? Maybe not where they come from, but once I have them, what I do with them, that I do have control over. You might not even believe the positive thoughts that you're trying to inject, because the negative thought habits that we've developed over the years are so strong. Yet, this is the starting point to changing that negativity towards a positive nature. The person who always thinks they'll be unconfident will never become confident. They won't even think it's possible. They won't even try. Sooner or later, we must believe it's possible. That is where the faith comes in. And if you have to lie to yourself first, then do it, if it's towards a positive end. And in the last chapter, Hill did argue that we'll even believe lies if we repeat them to ourselves long enough. So it's time to actively force ourselves to think something positive and catch our own negativity as much as possible. Again, this is before we even meet the negativity outside of ourselves. Just our own internal negativity is such a hurdle to get over, right? Like, we could have been positive on that date, and then externally something happened, like our pop tire, that starts ruining the mood. But before you even get to that point, you can even be so negative within your own mind, like, oh, I'm not deserving to be happy. Oh, maybe she doesn't like me. Oh, maybe this isn't going to work out. Oh, like, why does every date fail? Oh, you start thinking negatively from inside without anything external happening. She might be enjoying herself. It might be going great. You might be misreading the situation, whatever, right? But the thing is, before anything external, before we start dealing with the external negativities that could happen, there's so much internal negativity that we need to start taking control of. Autosuggestion as agency of control. On page 81, Hill writes, autosuggestion is the agency of control through which an individual may voluntarily feed his subconscious mind on thoughts of a creative nature, or, by neglect, permit thoughts of a destructive nature to find their way into this rich garden of the mind. Here, Hill is stating that thought habits will develop no matter what. If you don't take action to control your thoughts, well, guess what? You're still thinking. And if you repeat negative thoughts to yourself consistently, then you develop negative thought patterns. So we've already been putting this into action if we followed the steps from chapter 2 on desire. So if we wrote out our definite chief aim and have been reading it as instructed twice a day, then we've been on the road to developing a positive thought habit which aligns perfectly with our main aim in life. And Hill reminds us that we should have been reading aloud at a minimum twice a day. And not only to read it, but to also have faith and to visualize ourselves in possession of that money, and to try and imagine how it would feel to, have actualized our goal or gotten the money that we set out to get. And by doing this, you're voluntarily creating thought habits which align with your goals and efforts towards transmuting the desire into money. This bridging the gap requires creating a discrepancy, and visualizing yourself in this kind of gap creates a discrepancy. So you begin to know the positive feelings of how hitting your goal would feel. However, because you're not there yet, it creates a gap, right? You're between where you are now and where you want to be. And that gap emotionalizes your definite chief aim, giving it more strength. So now your desire is backed by strong emotions, because you really want to, you really dislike where you are now and you really want to get to where you're getting at. And if you can control them towards positive advancement, right, then you have more power to work in getting you to take action. So by aligning your thought habits with the goals, we have greater chance of success. And these positive thought habits help keep our thoughts in tune with our goals, strengthened by emotion, which ultimately leads to action, and also makes one's chances for success dramatically increase. Now, what happens if we just, repeat something Like if I have a quote in front of me, I could keep repeating it or repeating it the same way. If I have my definite chief aim there, why can't I just repeat it? Why do I have to emotionalize it? And what happens if we repeat our definite chief aim and these thoughts to ourselves, but don't, emotionalize them and have no emotion behind them? And Hill argues something like that repetition itself will not get us to where we want. We won't take our goals seriously. They won't affect us enough for it to become a burning desire. And that's the key here, is a burning desire. It becomes a need, not a want. It's something that consumes you. It becomes an obsession. I need to make this happen, not I simply want to make this happen. And a need which may require a lot of time to come true. And if we're not emotionalizing that, right, if it's just something that you could quote, it's very easy to also dismiss it. Repetition in itself is where Hill emphasizes that simply repeating without emotion is useless. You can repeat your goal a million times and get no results if it's not mixed with emotion and faith. So, like I just said, having a desire without emotion is weaker, but then the question becomes, can we inject emotion ourselves into our definite chief aims, right? Like, what if I've been chasing this goal for months now, and I'm reading it every day, reading my definite chief aim every day, and there are other things that pop up in my life that are equally important or seem important at the time, right? Can I and I read my definite chief aim now, but I don't emotionalize it. I don't really care about it the same way I did when I first wrote it down, right? I was obsessed. I was thinking about it all the time, blah, blah. Now, can we inject emotions ourselves, right, to kind of reinvigorate our definite chief aim? If so, right, let's say we can somehow emotionalize it by just simply acting like we, not simply reading it, but we're like, I really need this. You're lying to yourself. But how would that feel, right? If we're injecting emotion and that's not authentic, let's say it's not there. And the answer to that is it would feel inauthentic at first. And it may even be some kind of voluntary, imposter syndrome that you're putting yourself in. However, even if it feels fake, but it's helping us act towards the goal we set, then it might be worth it, right? This is where the whole fake it until you make it comes in. Eventually, you'll develop the characteristics necessary along with a backlog of experience, and it won't feel fake and inauthentic anymore. And we'll have developed the habit or implemented it into our character or learned how to make it our own. And this change in character is only possible because we are not set personalities for Hill, right? We can adapt who we are. We have free will and character development. And all that character development starts from thought. Now, that gets a bit tricky philosophically, but we'll leave that there. But it's never said and done. Now, let's assume that we've used autosuggestion and successfully brainwashed ourselves with, positive thoughts, positive thought habits, which harmoniously align with our goals to becoming financially free or financially successful. Is that it? Do we stop at that point? Is it simply an end goal we reach and then we can relax our thought control? And Hill writes on page 83, the price of the ability to influence your subconscious mind is everlasting persistence in applying the principles described here. You and you alone must decide whether or not the reward for which you are striving, the money consciousness, is worth the price you must pay for it in effort. Now, I could probably write an entire lecture just on that quote right there because I think it's so important. But the price for success towards our goals requires a constant vigilance, and that means we cannot waver in them until we accomplish them, maybe not even at that point, right? The second point is, how much do we value our goal? Is it worth the sacrifice this is calling for? So imagine now that your goal may take years to come into reality, and know that you will be met with constant negativity, setback, failure, uncertainty, all towards the goal, right? That's not even including the certain negative things that life throws at us, like illness, death, uncertain political climates, just things that take up your time. Knowing this, will you keep your mind focused on your goal? Will you hold yourself accountable? When you drift from your goal, will you come back, right? Do you really want this? Want it to the degree of care which it requires? Or do you know in your heart of hearts that, you're lying? Maybe this would be nice to have if it works out, but I won't be fazed if I don't get it. And that's the kind of thinking that is inviting failure for Hill. If your mind becomes negative, then your vigilance will be needed to catch yourself. But because a negative mindset will surely lead to failure, we must use autosuggestion to force positive thoughts into our conscious minds constantly. Are you willing to control your mind for the unforeseeable future toward a desired outcome? And this is no simple task. This type of self-control which Hill is calling for. And he wants to check us, right? How bad do you really want this? How do we feel in respect to our definite chief aim? Are we fanning the spark of the desire until it becomes, a wildfire, or are we letting it die out? Have we already forgotten our definite chief aim at this point? Only 4 chapters in. Have we even written it down like we were asked to in chapter 2? And time will always tell. However, the sooner we come to this realization and accept the sacrifices necessary, the better we'll be equipped when we're met with this hardship. Autosuggestion requires concentration. What is something that autosuggestion needs to be successful? And is it possible to just have faith in our desire just once and that's it? On page 84, Hill writes, "Your ability to use the principle of autosuggestion will depend very largely upon your capacity to concentrate upon a given desire until that desire becomes a burning obsession. Concentration is itself a skill which we must use in our mission towards riches, right? What is concentration? Is it a skill that we can develop and improve? And to influence our subconscious minds, we must present it with our desire, along with absolute faith, again, that we can get it and that we have within our power the capability to attain it, and if not now, then someday, and follow it up with action which lead towards those desires, or at least what we believe at the time to lead towards obtaining those things." On page 84, he writes, "Although the orders often have to be presented over and over again through repetition before they're interpreted by the subconscious mind, you can never do this without concentration, right? Right now, maybe I can sit here and read for half an hour, whereas you might be able to sit and read for 3 hours, right? I can only hold my concentration for that long before I start to drift off or just look at the words, but I'm not actually retaining any of the information, or I get lazy or whatever, I get tired, a million other things, right, that could happen that I just sense that my concentration is waning. But we need to be able to develop that because, again, we need to be able to concentrate on our goals for however long that takes. It might take years. Something easier like writing an essay, you only need to concentrate on it a week or something like that because it's due next week, let's say. And that's if you work on it every day. Like these goals, right? Getting financially free or bigger goals that we're aiming towards, we require out of us the ability to concentrate and focus on it and keep repeating it to ourselves. Ultimate responsibility for failure. On page 83, Hill writes, "Where failure is experienced, it is the individual, not the method, which has failed. If you try and fail, make another effort, and still another, until you succeed." Is failure always the individual's fault, and not the method? Why is blaming a method a problem? So, the individual, we, are in control of the plan. Same with failure. Failure is a state of mind where one gives up attempting to succeed. If one doesn't give up, then there are just obstacles, right? Failure is final to one person, and to another, it's just an obstacle that they're going to keep trying to overcome and eventually may overcome. So when we blame the method, we might not see a need to change our plans or improve our skills, or may simply just give up. Whereas when we take ultimate responsibility, we look at things that can be improved, even if that must happen within ourselves. We are not and will never be perfect, so there's always going to be room to improve. And if we just give in to failure all the time and don't think that we have any control over it, then sooner or later we're going to give up, right? But we need to get in the habit of seeing them as obstacles. Okay, this plan failed, I'll try another one. Oh, this tactic didn't work. Why didn't it work, right? Is it something I'm doing wrong? Is it something that can be improved? Blah, blah, blah. On the perfect plan. So what's better? Is it taking the time to develop a perfect plan, or taking immediate action without a plan? On page 85, Hill writes, "Do not wait for a definite plan through which you intend to exchange services. Be on alert for these plans, and when they appear, put them into action immediately. When the plans appear, they will probably flash into your mind through the sixth sense in the form of an inspiration." Have you ever had a hunch or intuition of what we should be doing? Hill argues that something similar will eventually come to you as a plan. When it does, you must start acting towards it immediately. It'll come about through our obsession, right? Through our obsession of our definite chief aim. Random thoughts will appear into our brain that get us closer to it, or that we believe can help us, or actions that we can take to get us closer to our goal. And at first, we may not even know what needs to be done, but through obsessing, emotionalizing, concentrating, our minds become open to new ideas, and we begin to, as if fitting in a puzzle, we begin to play with new ideas to see what can help us get closer, what can make us achieve our goals, what we're willing to try different things, right? So this allows us to be in a position where we can learn more and grow, right? And then we begin to see, again, all the experiences in our lives and how they can connect us to our goal. A recap of instruction. So to get results from this philosophy, Hill states that we must obey the instructions laid out in the spirit of faith. So, 1, we must close our eyes and repeat aloud the written portion of our definite chief aim. While doing this, believe that we will have it and visualize ourselves in its possession. 2, repeat this every night and morning until the visualization strengthens. And 3, place a written copy of your definite chief aim somewhere where it can be seen night and day, and to read and to memorize it. What are we doing by doing this? We're applying the principle of autosuggestion to influence our subconscious mind, which will help us create plans, keep our thoughts on our goal, and serve as motivation or discipline when our conscious mind falters. Do this with full faith that you can accomplish the goal you've set for yourself, and believe in yourself. We can only control our circumstances by first controlling our thoughts. There is no hope otherwise, and we become mere observers. Life happens to us, and we are just victims of its whims. Control is necessary to achieving our goals and our aims. If we cannot control the circumstances, then it's only chance or fate or hope or wishing that something happens. The first thing that we can do is start controlling our thought patterns. That's what auto-suggestion is all about. And I will see you next time.